Two corrupt cops thought they could humiliate and threaten an innocent woman, but they never expected John Cena and The Rock to step in. What happened next changed everything. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's spread this story together. The ocean stretched out like an endless mirror of pale blue, the waves rolling in with a rhythm that could lull even the most restless mind. Early morning sunlight painted the horizon in shades of gold, softening the air with the promise of a new day. For most, this was just another quiet morning on the beach, but for John Cena, it was different. It was the first real step back since the shoulder injury that had haunted him for weeks. The pain had been sharp when it first happened, a tearing agony that reminded him he wasn't invincible. Since then, every day had been a reminder of limitation. Doctors had told him to take it slow, that rushing into training again could cost him more than just time. It could end his career. For John, who had built his life on strength, resilience, and spectacle, the idea of weakness gnawed at him, yet today wasn't about wrestling rings, roaring crowds, or heavy iron weights. Today was about recovery, and his closest friend had made sure of that. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, walked beside him, a duffel bag slung casually over his broad shoulder. He carried himself with the calm confidence of a man who knew both glory and failure, and who had long ago learned that sometimes the slow path was the only one worth taking. He had been the one to drag John out here, insisting that if they didn't ease into training the right way, John would risk everything. 5 kilos, John muttered under his breath, eyeing the small dumbbells that Dwayne pulled from the bag. He held one in his hand, weighed it, and frowned. Seriously? This is a joke. I've seen toddlers lift heavier toys than this. Dwayne chuckled, the kind of deep, rolling laugh that seemed to shake his whole chest. Yeah, well, I hate to break it to you, brother, but right now you're not much stronger than a toddler. Those toys are exactly what you need. John shot him a glare, though the corners of his lips twitched. I can't be seen with these. If anybody recognizes me, I'll never live it down. John Cena training with baby weights? The memes will never stop. Good, Dwayne replied without missing a beat. Maybe the memes will keep you humble. Besides, you're not ready for more. Be smart, not stupid. He tossed one of the dumbbells to John, who caught it reluctantly. You try to be a hero with the heavy stuff again, and you'll tear that shoulder right out of the socket. Then what? End of career, end of everything. You want that? No, John admitted, looking away at the waves. Then shut up and train. For a while they ran along the shoreline. The sand shifted under their feet, each step testing balance and endurance. John's muscles burned faster than he expected, his breath heavy after only a few minutes. Dwayne kept pace easily, his frame towering and powerful, though even he was covered in sweat. After the run came squats, push-ups, stretches, and simple yoga poses with the dumbbells. John grunted through each movement, the humiliation stinging more than the effort. He wasn't used to this kind of weakness. Every drop of sweat reminded him of how far he had fallen. Finally, after one more sprint down the beach, John collapsed onto the sand, gasping for air. He lay on his back, chest heaving, the sun beating down on his face. That's it, he panted. I'm done. I'm not moving another step. I need a break. Dwayne crouched down next to him, resting his elbows on his knees. His grin was sharp. You're pathetic, Cena. We jogged a mile, did some baby squats, and you're dying. You used to throw people twice your size over your shoulders and keep running. John lifted his head, sweat dripping from his brow. Maybe, but don't confuse tired with finished. Trust me, I still got enough left in me to put you on your ass if I had to. Dwayne raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Is that so? Damn right, John replied, forcing himself to sit up. Weak or not, I'll always have enough in the tank to take you down." The playful spark between them wasn't new. Their friendship was built on this constant back and forth, a rivalry that was both real and theatrical. They knew how to push each other's buttons, how to lift each other up with the same energy they once used to hype a crowd. Still, Dwayne's smile faded into something more serious. He patted John on the back. "I'm glad you're out here, man. Really. You need this. And don't forget, this isn't about proving anything to anyone else. It's about proving to yourself that you can come back the right way." John nodded slowly. "Yeah, you're right." The breeze carried the smell of salt water and sunscreen, the distant cries of gulls mixing with the sound of children laughing farther down the beach. Around them, more people were starting to arrive. Families with umbrellas, joggers with headphones, surfers carrying boards under their arms. The world was waking up, and the quiet isolation of the early morning was slipping away. John pushed himself to his feet, brushing sand from his shorts. "All right, let's get something to eat. I need real fuel if you expect me to survive another round of this torture." "Now you're talking," Dwayne said, slinging the duffel bag back over his shoulder. "Food's on me. You earned it." As they walked toward a small cafe set back from the beach, John still felt the ache in his shoulder, the soreness in his legs, and the frustration in his chest. But there was also something else, a spark of hope. For the first time since the injury, he believed he might actually come back stronger. He didn't know that within minutes the calm of the morning would shatter. That just a few steps away, ugliness was already brewing. The kind of ugliness that had nothing to do with torn muscles or painful recovery, but everything to do with cruelty, power, and injustice. And when it arrived, John and Dwayne would have no choice but to step into the fight. They left the tide line behind, feet sinking into drier sand as they cut toward the boardwalk. The small beachfront cafe sat shaded beneath a line of crooked palms, its chalkboard menu leaning at a brave angle, letters smudged by salt air, iced coffee, breakfast wraps, fresh fruit. A radio murmured from somewhere inside, a bright melody that didn't try too hard. The scent of toasted bread drifted on the breeze and made John's stomach growl. "See?" Dwayne said, bumping his shoulder lightly. "Real fuel incoming. Doctor's orders." "Pretty sure you're not a doctor," John replied, rolling his sore shoulder with careful intent. "But I won't argue with sandwiches." They slowed to a stroll, the sprint of training replaced by the lazy pace of beachgoers. Families unfurled towels. A young couple tried to cajole a skittish dog into the waves. A trio of runners passed with synchronized breath, one of them nodding at Dwayne with the vague expression of someone recognizing a legend but unsure if they should intrude. It was the kind of scene that could settle a heartbeat, bright, ordinary, unthreatening. John flexed his fingers around the 5-kilo dumbbell he still carried, then laughed at himself and slid it into Dwayne's duffel. "Okay," he said, exhaling. "I'll admit it. The kid weights did the job." "Say it clearer," Dwayne teased. "I need it for my records." "You can frame it," John said. "John Cena concedes. Baby weights win." Dwayne grinned. "Now that's a headline. I'll shop it to the tabloids." They cut across a patch of shade beside a public shower and a vending machine nestled under the cafe's awning, the old metal kind with a stubborn coin slot and a temperamental glow. A patrol car idled along the curb nearby, nose angled toward the sand. Its lights were off, but the engine's hum carried under the music, a low, constant thrum that felt out of place among the sunburns and sunscreen. John noticed her first, a woman in a red one-piece swimsuit that caught the light like a small flag, tall and poised, her hair tucked away under a scarf patterned with tiny white flowers. She moved like someone who had long ago decided her space belonged to her, shoulders set, gaze steady. A flip-flop dangled from one finger as she approached the vending machine and fed it a bill. The machine labored, accepted, blinked. A cold can free fell to the catch. Nothing unusual, except the moment stretched, thin as thread, and the idling engine pressed on. "Hold up," Dwayne murmured, not stopping, just narrowing his eyes. Two uniforms sat inside the cruiser. The driver had an arm draped out the window, sun settling on a thin blue line tattoo coiled around his wrist like a bracelet. His partner leaned across the console, close enough that their shoulders touched. Both wore sunglasses. In polished glass, the beach moved in a distorted, fisheye world. Their posture broadcast boredom more than vigilance, the boredom that goes looking for something to do. John and Dwayne were still 10 paces off when the driver called out. The words came out lazy, performed, the radio melody suddenly a size too small to cover them. "Morning, sweetheart." The woman didn't turn. She slid her thumb beneath the tab and cracked the can. A hiss escaped and a fresh citrus smell cut the warm air. She took a sip and, only then, angled her head. Not a smile. Not a challenge. Just awareness. "Hydration," the driver continued, raising his free hand as if making a toast. "Important this time of day." His partner chuckled. "We can help with more than hydration if you're thirsty." John felt something change behind his ribs, an alertness that had nothing to do with training. He had spent enough time around crowds to know when the energy in a space shifted. This was the moment the mood tips on its axis. Not a shout, not contact, just a tone, a claim laid down like a marker. Dwayne's voice dropped, almost conversational. "Let's just watch a second." "Yeah," John said, though his jaw had already set. The woman took another sip. "I'm good," she said. Her voice was even, neither friendly nor afraid. "Thanks." The partner leaned further, elbow on the windowsill. "That's a lot of confidence for a morning soda." The driver gestured with his chin at the vending machine. "You sure you paid for that?" She blinked, slow. "I'm sure." "You know," the partner went on, "some folks think the beach is free-for-all, that machines had problems, people jamming it, stealing." "I put money in," she said, no defensiveness, just fact. "Ask the machine if you don't believe me." He smiled like a man who loved his own voice. "We'd rather ask you." The beach kept moving, runners, sandcastle architects, a teenager doing a clumsy handstand on a towel while his friend filmed. But a pocket of stillness formed around the scene as if heat were pooling there. A father in a wide-brim hat looked over once, then looked away. A barista peered across the counter and lifted a phone, thumb hovering over the screen, then set it down and turned to froth milk. Dwayne shifted the duffel from one shoulder to the other. "I hate that stillness," he said under his breath. "It's the sound of everyone deciding not to see." John didn't answer. His attention had narrowed to the small square of concrete in front of the machine and the three people orbiting it. The driver's smile met no purchase. His eyes flicked to John and Dwayne for a heartbeat. There and gone. Then back to the woman. "Got a name?" he asked. "I do." "You gonna share it?" "I'm not required to." "Depends." The partner's sunglasses tilted, a careful stage adjustment. "See, if there's a question about whether that drink belongs to you, then we have reason to ask." "It belongs to me," she said. "The machine took my money. The drink fell. That's how it works." The driver blew air through his teeth. "You local?" "Does it matter?" "Could," he said. "Locals know the rules." "I know how to use a vending machine." Something like a laugh came from the partner, and he opened his door with the casual choreography of someone who liked to unspool a scene. The door swung wide and creaked. He didn't step out yet. He let the presence of the open door do the first piece of work. A gull hopped closer and then skittered away. The world rearranged subtly, her line of exit narrowed by steel and stance. John's hands curled into fists without him telling them to. A dozen memories flashed, backstage stairwells where you felt an audience's hunger like weather, parking lots after late shows where strangers decided they owned a piece of you, hometown gyms where unspoken hierarchies patrolled the air. The details changed, but the geometry never did. Someone declares control, someone must decide whether to contest it. Easy, Dwayne said quietly. We don't escalate it, not unless we have to. I know, John said. He shifted his weight, feeling his shoulder twinge and then settle. Any move would have to respect that invisible boundary where pain lived. He was not in a ring. There were no ropes, no referee. There was a woman who had wanted a drink and morning men who wanted something else. The partner finally eased one foot to the ground, then the other. He took his time circling the door, coming around the nose of the car to stand a few feet from her. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. He set his stance so she'd need to pass within arm's reach if she wanted to go anywhere but backward. See, he said, this is where we like to make sure everything's in order. His hand indicated the can. Mind if we check that? Yes, she said, I do mind. I paid. Lot of counterfeit bills around, he said lightly. Beach scams. People print them at home. You'd be surprised. Then you can be surprised without me, she replied. She lifted the can and took another slow sip, her eyes never leaving his. Her hand didn't shake. The driver laughed like they'd reached a punchline only he got. He slid from behind the wheel in a single practiced motion, shut the door with a thud, and came to stand at his partner's shoulder. The pair of them formed a small wall in the shade. Dwayne and John stood at the edge of the shade's reach now, close enough to hear breath, but far enough that the scene wasn't theirs yet. Dwayne's face carried a neutrality that John recognized, a mask held ready to be broken the moment it became necessary. A family of four approached the cafe door and paused, eyes flicking from uniforms to woman to the two very large men who weren't yet involved. The father steered them around, murmuring, something about the bathroom being on the other side. Their footsteps quickened. The doorbell jingled. The radio got louder for a beat, then muffled again. Ma'am, the driver said, using the word like a test, we're going to need you to answer a few questions. She didn't move. I answered the ones I'm obligated to. You think you get to make the rules? His mouth smiled without humor. That's adorable. I think I get to stand here and drink what I paid for. The partner tilted his head, finally letting the sunglasses slip down his nose an inch so his eyes could do their own work. They were light and flat, a winter sky in summer. You making this more difficult than it has to be, he said. You know that, right? What's difficult, she said, is being harassed at a vending machine for no reason. He clicked his tongue, a small scolding sound. Then he took half a step closer, just enough to enter the radius of personal space. Careful, he said softly so that only the four of them could hear. Careful how you talk. Her chin went up a fraction. Careful how you act. A muscle jumped in John's jaw. Dwayne didn't look at him, but his tone shifted a degree. We'll intervene if they cross the line, he said. And they know there's a line. They're pretending not to, John said. The driver lifted his radio to his mouth and pressed the button without speaking, a little pantomime of officialdom. Then he let it hang and turned his attention back to the woman. Last chance, he said, voice still a honeyed drawl. You want to cooperate or you want to make a scene? She took a breath and set the half-empty can on the machine's metal lip with deliberate care. The tiny clink sounded louder than it should have. "What I want," she said, "is to be left alone." Silence collected for a heartbeat, thick, undeniable. A seagull cried overhead, sharp and singular, the sound skating across the glass of the cruiser's windshield. Somewhere behind them, silverware clinked against ceramic. Every ordinary noise sounded like a clock ticking down. The partner broke first, turning the stillness into motion. He put his palm flat against the machine near her shoulder and leaned in, not touching her, but close enough that the heat of his body changed the air. The message wasn't subtle. His other hand hovered at his duty belt, fingers drumming. "You're not walking away yet," he murmured, almost cheerfully. "We're not finished." John took a step before he realized he'd taken it. Dwayne matched him, toe for toe, as if tethered by an invisible line. The space between bystanders and scene shrank to something small enough to cross with a breath. The woman shifted her weight, sliding her shoulder a fraction so that his palm no longer boxed her against cold metal. Her eyes didn't leave his. "Move your hand," she said. No tremor, no plea. The driver laughed softly and shook his head, and the sound was somehow uglier for being quiet. "This isn't how you want your morning to go." "It's exactly how I want it to go," she said, "with you not touching what isn't yours." "You see any touching?" he asked, tone sugar. "We're just having a conversation." "You're blocking my way," she said. Dwayne exhaled through his nose. "That's the line," he said, so low John almost didn't hear him. "That's it." But they held a beat longer, bodies coiled without yet springing. The calculus of intervention is real. Sometimes you step too soon and shape an outcome that could have been avoided. Sometimes you wait and betray yourself for the sake of a politeness that was never owed. The trick is knowing the breath in which a moment declares itself. It declared itself when the partner's fingers stopped drumming and settled into a curl, when his weight tipped forward a little on the balls of his feet. It declared itself when the driver's gaze slid sideways, measuring the distance between his hand and the radio again, as if rehearsing the story he might tell. It declared itself when a woman who had asked for nothing but the right to stand and sip a drink was confronted with two men who wanted compliance to taste like courtesy. John's shoulder ached with memory. He rolled it back and felt the joint catch and release, a small gate swinging on hinge. Dwayne's grip tightened on the duffel strap, canvas side. The partner smiled without warmth. "Tell you what," he said, "we'll take a look at that bill you used. Make sure it's good. Then we're done." He gestured to her hand. "Hand it over." "No," she said. He let the smile drop. The music from inside the cafe cut to an ad and then to another song. The transition, too loud for a second, made several heads turn, and when the volume fell back, more people than before were watching, but from a distance, from safety. Eyes over coffee cups, eyes behind sunglasses. Eyes that knew this script and hated it and hoped it would end without requiring anything of them. The driver took a step, closing the distance his partner had already closed. "We can do this easy," he said, "or we can do it hard." John's voice was almost calm when it came. "It's about to get easy," he said, not to Dwayne, not quite to himself. Because the partner shifted his palm from the vending machine to the edge of the can, 2 fingers, then 3, and the woman's hand came up to guard it, and the driver's stance squared, and the last scraps of plausible deniability floated away like gulls startled into flight. John took one more step. Dwayne matched him again. The distance between them and the scene dwindled to almost nothing, hardly wider than the breath it took to cross it. The woman's gaze flicked once toward John and Dwayne, not a plea, not a signal, simply an acknowledgement that she saw who stood in her periphery. Then she looked back at the men in front of her and said, clear and flat, "Move." The partner's mouth crooked. The driver's fingers brushed his radio again. That was where the morning ended and something else began. John didn't need to look at Dwayne to know they were done waiting. He set his feet on the concrete, feeling the grains of sand under his shoes like static, and drew a long, steady breath. The ocean kept breathing behind them. The sun climbed. Somewhere, a bell on a bicycle rang twice, and inside the cafe, a barista finally raised her phone again, this time not to threaten footage, but to find it. They were 3 steps from the vending machine when the partner tried to pluck the can out of the woman's grip. John's hands came up without argument from his shoulder, and the beach, bright, ordinary, unthreatening, shattered. The can wobbled in her hand when the officer's fingers grazed its edge, but she held on, her grip steady, as if that small aluminum cylinder were the only proof she needed of her right to exist there. Her voice sharpened, cutting through the heavy air. "I paid for this. Step back." The driver smirked and leaned against the vending machine, posture oozing arrogance. "Oh, we heard you. You say you paid. But saying it doesn't make it true, sweetheart." He let the last word slither from his lips like a taunt. His partner took a step closer, squaring himself in front of her. "Look at you," he said with a grin that didn't touch his eyes. "Strutting round in that red suit like the beach belongs to you. Newsflash, it doesn't. We run this strip. We decide what happens here." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. "You don't get to decide who drinks a soda or who walks free on this beach." "Wrong," the driver replied. He lowered his sunglasses enough for his cold eyes to show. "You think you're someone, but to us, you're nothing. Just another mouthy piece of trash that forgot her place." The partner chuckled, circling her slowly so that her exit narrowed even more. He whispered, but loud enough for everyone within reach to hear, "Let's be real. You're not here for a drink. You're here to tease, to get attention, and now you've got it. You want to know what happens next?" The woman folded her arms tightly across her chest, though her chin lifted defiantly. "What happens next is you back off before you regret it." The driver's laugh was low and cruel. "Regret? Oh, honey, regrets for you. Do you really think anyone's going to believe you over us? You're nothing more than—" He let the word hang, then spat it with venom, "a black bitch with a smart mouth." Around them, the cafe quieted. A father, dragging his son toward the boardwalk, whispered something harsh, quick, pulling the boy's gaze away. 2 college kids with surfboards glanced at each other, nervous, and crossed the street instead of walking past. Every bystander saw, but no one stepped in. The partner leaned closer, his breath hot, sour with coffee. "Here's the deal. You smile, you hand over that can, and maybe we let you go with a warning. Or—" he clicked his tongue, savoring the silence that followed. "Or we have some fun. See how long you last in cuffs. We can say you tried to steal, say you resisted. Nobody's gonna question us. We're the law here." Her eyes flashed fire. "You're not the law. You're cowards hiding behind badges." The driver's smirk twisted into something darker. He reached out suddenly, his hand brushing her arm. "Careful, girl. You don't want to make this worse for yourself. You've got a pretty face. Shame if someone rearranged it." She slapped his hand away. "Don't touch me." The partner's grin widened, sadistic now. "Oh, she's feisty. I like that. Maybe we should take her for a little ride, break her in the back seat. Right here, right now, no one would stop us. Everyone's too scared." His gaze flicked across the cafe windows, mocking the patrons who had turned away. John Cena's fists clenched at his sides. Dwayne's jaw flexed, his nostrils flaring. They were still, a few steps back, watching, waiting, but the patience was draining from their faces. The driver, emboldened, hissed, "Face it, you're nothing but meat. Something to play with when we're bored. That's all you'll ever be. You think your word stands up against ours? Not a chance." The woman's voice cut through, sharp as glass. "My word is the truth, and the truth always comes out." The partner barked a laugh, cruel and dismissive. "Truth? Truth is whatever we write in the report. Truth is you behind bars, crying while the world nods along. Truth is us, not you, understand?" The stillness of the beach was suffocating. The gulls screamed overhead, but the people nearby stayed quiet, afraid to interfere. The officers pressed closer, their shadow over her growing heavier, their words sharper and filthier with every breath. And just as the driver leaned in again, lips curling into another insult, John Cena's voice broke the silence. Low, firm, impossible to ignore. "That's enough." Both officers turned, their sneers freezing for a moment as they finally noticed the two massive figures closing the gap. Cena, muscles taut even in recovery, and the Rock, towering, eyes cold, stance unmovable. The woman held her ground, but a flicker of relief crossed her face. She was no longer alone. The stage was set. The next move would decide everything. The air grew heavier the moment Cena's voice cut through the noise. Yet, instead of backing down, the two officers locked eyes with each other and smirked. They could smell the tension, and they thrived on it. The partner leaned closer to the woman, his voice dipping into something darker, something that made the cafe chatter behind the glass fall silent again. "You hear that?" he whispered near her ear, tilting his head toward John and Dwayne. "Now, even the muscleheads want to play hero. Guess today's gonna be entertaining." He chuckled, low and cruel. "We're not done with you, sweetheart. Not by a long shot." The driver slid his sunglasses onto the top of his head, revealing sharp, pale eyes that gleamed with malice. He looked her up and down, as if she were nothing but an object to him. "Let me explain how this goes. You hand me that soda, you give us your ID, and maybe we let you walk. But keep running that mouth and we'll put you in cuffs. Then," he licked his lips for emphasis, "we'll have a little fun before anyone even realizes you're gone." Her body stiffened. "You wouldn't dare." The driver's grin widened, wolfish. "Dare? Oh, honey, it's not about daring. It's about power. And right now, all of it's mine." His partner barked out a laugh, then stepped fully into her space, his hand snapping out to seize her wrist. His grip was iron, squeezing until her knuckles whitened. "Scream if you want. Who do you think they'll believe? A pretty little liar in a red swimsuit, or two decorated officers of the law?" He yanked her arm forward just enough to make her stumble. His voice dropped, low and venomous. "Face it. To us, you're nothing but a toy. A way to kill some time, a body to push around." "Let me go," she demanded, pulling back. But he only leaned in closer, his grin vile. "Why would I? You should be flattered. Not everyone gets the attention of men like us." He winked at his partner. "Sadist's gonna have himself some fun today." The driver's voice cut in, mocking, dripping with malice. "Oh yeah, we'll say she stole, resisted arrest, assaulted an officer, easy paperwork. She disappears into a cell and nobody bats an eye. You really think some judge is going to take your word over ours?" He gave a harsh laugh. "Not in this lifetime." The woman's chin lifted, fire sparking in her eyes even as her wrist trembled in his grip. "You're cowards, both of you, and I'll make sure the world knows it." Her words were bold, but her voice betrayed the strain. She was cornered, caged by their bulk, by their threats, by the silence of the beachgoers who pretended not to see. People hurried past, an old man adjusting his hat, a mother pulling her daughter toward the surf, a teenager clutching a phone but refusing to raise it. Eyes flickered toward the scene, then away, shame and fear shackling them. The partner twisted her arm higher, forcing a pained gasp from her lips. "Careful," he hissed. "You don't want to make me angry. You'll end up with more than bruises." "Stop!" she snapped, trying to wrench free, but the driver only laughed again, stepping closer so that the circle around her shrank further. No, let him enjoy this. I like it when they squirm first. Breaks them faster." He lowered his voice to a hiss. "You're just meat. That's all you'll ever be. Meat we get to do whatever we want with." The partner leaned close, his mouth almost at her ear, his grip unrelenting. "Nobody here is going to help you. They're all too scared. It's just you and us, and we're gonna—" "Enough," Cena growled, stepping forward so fast the sand scattered beneath his sneakers. His eyes blazed, locked onto the officer's hand, crushing her wrist. "Let her go," the driver sneered, finally acknowledging the looming presence of John Cena and Dwayne Johnson. "Or what? You think this is the ring, boy? You think a couple of washed-up entertainers scare us?" The partner smirked, keeping his grip tight. "Yeah, this is real life. Out here, we write the script, not you." But they didn't notice how close Dwayne had stepped, how his shadow now swallowed theirs. His expression was carved from stone, his massive frame tense, ready. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. When he finally spoke, it was like thunder muffled in a storm cloud. "You just crossed the line." The officer's smirks faltered just slightly. The beach held its breath, the gulls circling overhead falling silent. The moment balanced on a knife's edge, the sadistic threats of two corrupt men, and the righteous fury of two legends ready to bring it crashing down. The moment hung suspended, brittle as glass. The partner's grip crushed the woman's wrist, twisting it just enough to force her to her knees, and the driver loomed beside him, savoring every second of her pain. Their cruel smiles fed off each other, a private joke played out in public. But the stillness cracked when John Cena stepped forward, his body coiled like a spring, and his voice cut through the beach like a whip. "Let her go," he said, each word carved with steel. The driver turned slowly, deliberately, a smirk still plastered across his face. "You again? Didn't I tell you to mind your business? You think the crowd cheers for you out here? This isn't the ring. This is real life, and in real life, we own it." The partner tugged harder on the woman's arm, making her wince. "She's resisting," he spat, loud enough for the bystanders to hear. "That's assault on an officer right there." "You call that resisting?" Cena growled. His fists clenched, his chest rising and falling with controlled fury. "If you want someone to fight, I'll give you someone to fight." The driver barked a laugh. "Oh, big man wants to play hero. Careful, Cena. Heroes bleed just like everyone else." He reached down to his belt, fingers closing around the grip of his taser. "How about you be our next arrest? Interference with police work." He yanked the taser free, aiming it straight at John's chest. The metallic click echoed too loud in the morning air. The woman gasped. Some of the cafe patrons ducked back inside, murmuring, glass clinking as they tried to disappear. But before the taser could even crackle, a massive hand clamped around the officer's wrist. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson moved faster than anyone thought a man of his size could. His grip locked like iron, twisting the officer's arm just enough to make him gasp. The taser tumbled into the sand. "You point that at him," Dwayne said, his voice deep and cold. "You point it at me, and trust me, officer, you don't want that fight." The driver tried to jerk his arm free, but Dwayne squeezed tighter, eyes boring into him. His size was overwhelming, his presence undeniable. The crowd that had pretended not to watch now peeked through fingers, phones sliding discreetly into the air. The partner dropped the woman's wrist with a shove and spun toward Cena, ready to lash out. "You lay a finger on us, and I'll—" He didn't finish. Cena's body moved on instinct, the ring training ingrained in his bones. He ducked low, wrapped his arms around the officer's waist, and with one explosive motion lifted him clean off his feet. Sand sprayed as Cena pivoted, slamming the officer flat onto the ground with a classic wrestling takedown. The cop's sunglasses flew off, his head snapping back with the impact. He groaned, stunned, unable to rise. The woman stumbled back, clutching her wrist, her chest heaving. She looked between the two legends, disbelief flickering in her eyes, but also relief. "Try that again," Cena snapped, pinning the partner's arm to the ground with his knee. "See how it ends for you," the driver snarled, still caught in Dwayne's grip. "You don't know who you're messing with. We'll bury you in paperwork. We'll ruin your names." Dwayne leaned closer, his face a storm. "You think a badge makes you untouchable? You think abuse makes you a man? You're not law, you're trash. And today, trash gets taken out." The officer's face reddened as he struggled. Dwayne wrenched his arm, forcing him to his knees, then shoved him down into the sand. Cena reached into his pocket with one hand while keeping the partner restrained with the other. He pulled out his phone, raised it high, and let the screen's glow reflect off their faces. "Smile," he said darkly. "You're on camera. Every word, every threat, every filthy thing you said, recorded. And this is going to the people who will listen." The officers froze, eyes wide. The driver stammered, "No, come on, don't do this. We were just messing around." "Messing around?" Cena barked. He shoved his knee harder into the man beneath him, forcing a grunt of pain. "You humiliated her. You threatened her. You thought you could ruin her life for fun. That's not a joke. That's a crime." The partner, gasping under Cena's weight, muttered desperately, We didn't mean it like that. Please, don't ruin us. We've got families, kids." The woman stepped closer now, her wrist red, but her posture tall. Her voice trembled, but not with fear, with power. "You should have thought about your families before you tried to destroy mine. I don't forgive you. This isn't ending with apologies." Dwayne released the driver, shoving him roughly into the sand. The man scrambled to his knees, spitting grit, his arrogance crumbling into desperation. Cena finally let go of the partner, standing tall, his phone still recording. "Get out of here," Cena growled, "before you make it worse for yourselves." The two officers scrambled back toward their cruiser, stumbling like men who had lost their balance on the world. Their uniforms were coated in sand, their pride shattered. Cena lowered his phone, breathing hard. Dwayne turned to the woman, his tone gentler now. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly, though her wrist trembled in her grip. "Thanks to you." She met Cena's eyes, gratitude mixing with resolve. "Thanks to both of you." The crowd that had been silent was now buzzing. Phones captured the aftermath, whispers spread, and though some still looked afraid, many now looked emboldened. The story was no longer confined to the sand. It was already moving outward, into the world beyond the beach. And Cena knew, as he slid the phone back into his pocket, that this fight wasn't finished. Not until the whole world saw what had just happened. The beach fell quiet again after the officers stumbled back into their cruiser. The engine roared, tires spun, and the car tore away down the road, leaving a trail of dust and humiliation in its wake. The sound faded, but the tension lingered. Every face turned toward the woman in the red swimsuit, toward Cena and Dwayne, toward the space where violence had just been carved into the morning. The woman held her wrist, still raw from the officer's grip. She exhaled slowly, gathering herself. Her eyes glistened, not from fear, but from the fire of surviving a moment designed to break her. She stepped closer to John and Dwayne, her voice steady. "You don't know what you did for me today. Most people would have walked away. You didn't." Cena's expression softened. He looked down at his phone, the screen still lit with the recording. "We couldn't. What they did, what they said, that's not something you turn your back on. People like them think power is a shield. But power without honor?" His gaze hardened. "That's poison." Dwayne crossed his arms, his massive frame still radiating presence. "And poison's gotta be flushed out." The woman gave a small, tired smile. "Then I hope you're ready, because this isn't just about me anymore. It's bigger than that." Cena nodded. "That's exactly why this video's going out. Everyone's going to see what they are." He tapped the screen. "They tried to make her a criminal. Instead, they just convicted themselves." Whispers spread through the cafe, through the beachgoers who had witnessed everything. A young man in a baseball cap stepped forward, his phone raised. I caught it too," he admitted. "The whole thing. People need to know." He glanced at the woman, guilt in his eyes. "I should have stepped in sooner. I'm sorry." She shook her head. "You're helping now. That matters." Within hours, the video Cena recorded began circulating online. By evening, it was everywhere. Headlines blared across news sites. Corrupt officers caught harassing black woman on beach. Clips replayed on social media, millions of views piling up as people watched two supposed protectors spew racism, threats, and cruelty. The world heard every insult, every sadistic taunt, every moment they tried to crush her dignity. And the world also saw two men step forward when no one else would. By the next morning, cameras crowded outside the precinct. Reporters shouted questions, officials rushed into offices with grim faces. Pressure mounted, unstoppable. The police chief stood at a podium, sweat glistening under the flash of bulbs. His words were clipped, but they carried the weight of condemnation. "These officers are a disgrace to the badge," he declared. "They do not represent our department, our values, or our duty to protect and serve. Effective immediately, they are terminated from their positions." The footage played behind him on a projector, the insults, the threats, the violence, and then the intervention. Gasps rippled through the crowd of journalists as every detail was laid bare. The chief's voice rose again. "We will not tolerate this behavior. They are under arrest, and they will face full charges in court." For weeks, the story dominated headlines. The trial was swift, evidence undeniable. The officers pleaded, begged, tried to twist their actions as a misunderstanding, but the recordings left no room for lies. The jury needed less than a day. Both men were sentenced to 3 years in prison, their badges stripped, their names spat out as a warning of what happens when authority turns into tyranny. The woman stood outside the courthouse when the verdict was announced, reporters pressing microphones toward her. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying over the noise. "Today isn't just about me. It's about every person who's been silenced, mocked, or threatened by people who swore to protect them. Today shows that truth will find its way out, no matter how hard someone tries to bury it. And tomorrow, maybe someone else will stand a little taller because they know they're not alone." Later that evening, she met John and Dwayne again, away from the cameras on a quieter stretch of beach. The sky was streaked with orange, waves rolling in soft and calm. She approached them with gratitude shining in her eyes. "You gave me back my voice," she said, "and you reminded me I wasn't invisible. Thank you for stepping in when no one else did." Cena rested a hand on his hip, looking at her with solemn respect. "Don't thank us, thank yourself. You stood your ground even when they tried to break you. That strength, That's yours." But then his tone sharpened, conviction firm. People like them, anyone who thinks power is an excuse to abuse, need to face consequences. Always. And now they have. Dwayne nodded, his voice low but resolute. The fight's never over, but today justice landed a blow. The three of them stood in silence for a moment, the ocean whispering against the sand, the setting sun burning out the shadows. A sense of closure hung in the air, not perfect, not final, but real. The world had seen. The world had answered. And for once, truth had triumphed over fear. Justice was served. The corrupt cops were exposed, fired, and sentenced. But this story is more than just punishment. It's proof that truth cannot be silenced. If you believe in justice, like, comment, and subscribe to support our channel.